So I want to talk about these massage guns. I don't really like calling it a gun, that sounds so aggressive. So let's call it an oscillator, right? Because that's basically what it does, right? Is it oscillates. So people commonly use these to sort of meat tenderize things. They use it to attack tension or subdue tension. But the way that I'm talking about using this today in terms of self-care is not that. So what we're going to want to do, okay, is we can get very powerful results with this very easily. But here's what I'm going to suggest, is that you sort of you close your eyes, you dial in, pay attention to your whole body, your whole inner experience, and notice where you feel sensations. And probably these are going to be discomfort, tenderness, pain, and let's just put that to the side for a moment, and let's kind of zoom back and pay attention to our whole body and notice the areas that you don't have sensation, or you have a very decreased amount of sensation, very little awareness of them. So do a little scan through your body and notice where you don't have that, almost like a black hole in your body image. And that is going to be the area that you probably want to start with. Right? And the reason for that, if you have your eyes closed, you can open them back up, is this sort of principle. Our body operates just like this. There's a variety of elements that interact with each other to create an overall thing. So we can distort it, but it comes back to where it was. We can distort it, but it comes back to where it was because of the relationships define its qualities. So, but those black areas, those areas of absence of sensation in the body, those are the compressed areas. Those are the areas that are so challenged by compression that they never open up in our day-to-day lives. They don't produce any motion, and so we get no feedback from them, and eventually our brain stops paying attention to that area, and it starts paying attention to the areas that are tight like a guitar string and very strained, and that's where we feel the tension. So oftentimes what we do is with our stretching or with our treatments, with these types of oscillators, we go in and we address these areas and we subdue them until they relax even further, and we go, finally I can feel some lack of tension in that area, but we've almost paralyzed it. What we want to do is balance it out. Health is balance. So if we can get this area to relax, then it gives slack to this area, and then we don't have to experience that tension anymore. So we will address this area at the second part of the treatment protocol, but what I would suggest is treating those areas where there's an absence of sensation first. And again, I'm not suggesting that you hammer those areas and try and correct them. This is self-care, this is self-love. So what we're actually trying to do here, our intention that we're holding, is just to bring in just enough influence until we experience a change in the inner sensation. So in one of those dark areas, it might be that you bring in just enough oscillation, just enough influence that you start to receive feedback from that area and you can start to feel sensation in that area. So then stay with that for a while until that area starts to feel good, starts to feel loose, starts to feel awake, and then you can move on to some of the areas where the pain is. But then again, there with the pain, we're not trying to subdue that area, we're not trying to dominate it, we're trying to listen to our bodies and receive that feedback through our inner sensation and give it just enough influence from the outside, a supportive influence, until it re-regulates itself and comes to a new balanced baseline. And that's all that we're trying to do. I've seen some pretty amazing results using an oscillator, even compared to my hands as an osteopathic manual practitioner. So, osteopathic manual therapist. So I would really encourage people, if you look at the price of one of these oscillators, we're looking at $70 to $100, let's say, sometimes more, $150. But when you look at the price of one treatment with an osteopathic manual therapist versus the cost of getting this as a self-care tool, if you can get some benefit out of this, this is going to more than pay for itself. It's going to save you a lot of money. And that's a second point to make here, is that when you use an intervention, the dosage, the frequency that you take that influence in really matters. It matters if you work out once a month versus 3 times a week. You'll get a completely different set of results. It matters if you take an antibiotic 3 times a day for 2 weeks, or if you take one pill once. You're going to get a completely different results. So if you can treat yourself at home and encourage that flow to come back, then you're going to get a whole different spectrum of results that open up. And it's hard to afford a regular treatment with an osteopathic manual therapist. So this is a really good option that I want to encourage people for. And so now I'm remembering the part that I actually wanted to say at the starting, but it can be the ending too. The reason why this works and the reason why we're using this as an oscillator rather than a meat tenderizer is, on a microscopic level, we can think of our bodies as looking like a sponge. It's a whole network of these interconnected, spiraling, braided tunnels, tubes. Okay? So there's fluid that's bathing the tubes that allows them to slide past each other, and there's fluid that's inside the tube which flows down the tube. And when something has no fluid in it, like beef jerky, it gets very stiff. So a loss of range of motion, a stiffness, a restriction, a grinding, that is a loss of the fluid in the tissue. Then the microcirculation has been compromised. So really what we're doing is we're not trying to pound tension into submission. What we're doing is we're trying to pump. That's what this is doing, right? It's actually pumping. 3,000 times a minute, we're getting a pumping action going through. We're bringing compression and releasing. And the same way that you would do CPR on someone for a little bit, and then they would start to come back to life themselves, the same way you would start a lawnmower and the lawnmower gets going, or you would start a siphon and then the siphon process gets going and then it continues by itself. That's what we're looking to do with the oscillator, is get that microcirculation, that flow of fluid through the tissue tunnels again, restored, and then the body will take it from there and it'll be able to bring all the building blocks in and get all the waste products out, and we call that health and healing in the tissue. So just to explain the intention behind it, again, we don't need to pound it into submission, we're just giving it supportive restoration of circulation. And so I suggest that most people would benefit from this approach, and it would be a very cost-effective approach as well.